making some bread. I'm making the Incredible Toast Basic Loaf. For my experiment, I'm going to be using one with a pre-ferment and one without. For those of you that are not aware of what a pre-ferment is, it's early activation of the yeast so that it can build up the lactic acid and the acetic acid to kind of give it a sour flavor. Not as much as a sourdough, but to give some unique flavors, I'm going to compare the two compared to a controlled bread done with the original experiment. Today, for the first thing, we're going to start out. For the pre-ferment, we actually have to do about 12 hours ahead of time. And right now, I already have my 1 cup of water, 1 cup of flour, because you want them both to be equal parts for liquid Poolish is what it's called. And as the yeast, I've already calculated out that I needed about 0.1 ounces. I did want to point out that I'm going to be using Red Star active dry yeast, excuse me. And I'm going to be using King Arthur's unbleached bread flour. Bread flours are made from harder wheats. They have more protein in them, so they're going to have more gluten potential for a stronger bread. I wanted to note that I have taken the temperature down of the environment. It's at 75 degrees. I'm going to try to keep that as consistent as possible throughout the night while the bread or the pre-ferment is fermenting. I just wanted to show you guys that I got the Poolish done. I've got it wrapped up. I don't want to turn it over too much because I wanted to let you guys know it has kind of the consistency of pancake batter. We're going to let it sit out for that 12 hours, and like I said, it's at a 75 degrees, which a good pre-ferment needs to be somewhere around 72 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit, preferably on the lower range. Gonna let this go over all night. Have a good night, guys. Morning, guys. Pre-ferment was left out all night just to kind of show you it is kind of still a pancake batter. It kind of has some soapy bubbles on the top, kind of what it resembles. One thing to notice that I am noticing that it is actually sticking to the wall, which tells me that the gluten is starting to build up from the glycine and the glutenin plus the water. It's not very strong because it is the 1-to-1 ratio of the flour and the water together, but it is still sticking, kind of clinging, telling me that that's already started to develop. The next step in the process is I'm going to start the original recipe as well as the starter potato and milk step for the pre-ferment. I'm going to be using Sacco Mix and Drink instant non-fat dairy milk. I'm going to be using Great Value mashed potato flakes, good old Great Value. Once again, still the bread flour, the King Arthur's, and our Red Star dry active yeast. Alright, for this next step, we've let the dough mix for about 30 minutes. It's sat. The next step is going to be adding vitamin C, our melted butter, the egg yolk, corn syrup, ice, salt, and flour. The additional 3 cups of flour. I wanted to let you guys know what brand I'm using. Land of Lakes butter, Great Value corn syrup, I believe, yes, Spring Valley vitamin C, just a quarter of that 500 milligram tablet. And then we are going to be using Private Selections Fine Mediterranean Sea Salt. Alright, got the dough done mixing. As you can see, I'm having a hard time getting it out of the bowl. It's very elastic, very sticky. I've got this oiled up bowl here that I'm going to let it sit for the first rise process. I'm going to make sure that I'm covering the entire dough with the oil so that it doesn't stick. And then we're going to cover it with film wrap and let it sit for about an hour so that it can double. Another note I don't want to forget, with the difference with the pre-ferment experiment, I'm actually going to use this in replace of activating the yeast for the 2-minute as the original. We are using this pre-ferment. To make it, I did use a cup of flour, if you don't remember, with the cup of water. We have to take that into account and subtract from what we took. So rather than adding a cup and 3/4 into, I'm just going to do the 3/4 since we've already used the flour for the pre-ferment. One thing that I wanted to point out here is this is the pre-ferment batter that I made.
after mixing the potatoes in with, or the potato dry milk mixture. As you can see, it's a lot more malleable, a lot more liquidy. So we'll see how that plays out.
All right, guys, this is the pre-fermented dough. It has actually risen a little bit more than the actual original recipe dough. It could have been possibly because of the fermentation, the extra fermentation process, extra rising. But at this step, we're going to punch down with our fist. We're going to punch in the center, and we're exhausting the dough of the carbon dioxide that's been produced by the yeast. And once we get that all flattened out, we're going to wrap from the back, pull down. Oh, this texture, it's a lot softer than the original was. It's a lot more tender. And what we're trying to do whenever we take the back side and push down and the front side and push down in the center is we're taking the dough that's in the center, or that was on the inside, and pushing it out to the outside, and the outside dough to the inside to help break up some of those yeast clusters that build up during the rising process. And once we've gotten that all taken out, what we want to do is we're going to split the bread. And we don't want to rip, but we do want to kind of squeeze in the middle here and kind of pinch till it breaks. And we have our dough now. And I'm going to round these off. And once I get them rounded, I'm going to wrap them in plastic, let them sit for another 15 minutes, and then after that it'll be time for kneading and then shaping. Also forgot to add that I'm going to be putting this beaten egg mixture on top to help with the browning. All right, guys, last bit of baking. Got it out of the oven. I'm going to show you kind of what happened here. These are my free-form loaf that was not the pre-ferment, and this is the one that was actually in the shape. As you can tell, it has the shape of the bowl. They are actually darker than the pre-ferment ones, which this one is my free-form one, and the bread-formed one in the tray. One of the things I've noticed is that the original recipe is a little darker than the pre-ferment, and I think what the reason for that is that I might have gotten a little too much egg on it, the blended egg glaze on it, because it's definitely, I don't know, more of a darkish brown than the other one. The second batch I went through, I didn't put as much on, and the color is supposed to be, or is around where it needs to be. One thing that I also did notice was whenever I cut into these, they are both about the same texture and crumb size. I'm not sure if you can try to see. They're about the same consistency. I did notice that the original one was a little more tough, not as soft as the pre-ferment one, and that could have been the moisture retention. After trying my experiment, I actually did enjoy the pre-ferment flavor a lot more. It was actually a flavor. With the original recipe, I didn't really get any flavor whatsoever. It was kind of a bland, just bland bread all around. The pre-ferment bread actually had more of a bread taste, I guess. I'm not sure, that sourdough-ish taste, but I prefer this one a little bit more. Something else that could have happened with this is I accidentally did not knead this properly, and so as you can see there's some disformation, whereas the other ones are more uniform. So, thanks for hanging out with me guys this week, and next week, see you then.